The sound of my laptop closing echoed through the conference room as the last stakeholder filed out, their faces bright with satisfaction. Another successful project presentation. Another budget delivered on time and under cost. The quarterly numbers gleamed from the projection screen like a badge of honor. Clara Martinez, project manager, had done it again. I was still organizing my notes when my phone buzzed with a message from Mr. Harrison's assistant. Please come to his office immediately. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The walk down the marble-floored corridor felt longer than usual. Manhattan's corporate towers pressed against the floor-to-ceiling windows, their glass facades reflecting the late afternoon sun into fractured patterns across the walls. I'd made this walk dozens of times over the past 3 years, usually to receive praise or discuss new opportunities. Today felt different. The air conditioning seemed sharper, the silence more pronounced. Harrison's corner office commanded a view of Central Park, but he wasn't looking at it when I knocked. He was staring at a manila folder spread across his mahogany desk, his usually composed expression troubled. "Clara, please sit." His tone carried none of its usual warmth. I settled into the leather chair opposite him, my hands folded in my lap, a posture I'd perfected during years of high-stakes meetings. "Is everything all right? The Morrison presentation went very well. The client seemed—" "Clara." He held up a hand, stopping me mid-sentence. "We need to discuss something serious, something that's been brought to my attention." My stomach tightened. In the corporate world, brought to my attention rarely preceded good news. Harrison opened the folder, revealing what appeared to be financial documents, bank statements, transaction logs. My name appeared on several pages, highlighted in yellow. "There's been an allegation made against you, a serious one." The words hit me like ice water. An allegation? "Someone has reported that you've been making unauthorized withdrawals from your department's budget, approximately $50,000 over the past 6 months. The conference room's success suddenly felt like a lifetime ago. I would never. The allegations include forged invoices, phantom vendors, and deliberate budget manipulation. His voice was clinical, distant. This wasn't the man who'd congratulated me on my promotion last year or who'd praised my attention to detail in front of the board. I leaned forward, my voice steady, despite the chaos in my chest. "Mr. Harrison, I've never stolen anything from this company. Not $50, not 50 cents. Who would make such an accusation?" He closed the folder, his fingers drumming against its edge. "The source claims to have evidence, direct knowledge of your activities." "What source?" The question came out sharper than I intended. Harrison's pause stretched long enough for me to hear the office air conditioning cycling on. When he finally spoke, his words felt like a physical blow. "Your sister, Sophia Martinez." The world tilted. My sister's name hung in the air between us, like smoke from a fire I couldn't see but could suddenly smell burning everything around me. Sophia, my younger sister who called me when her rent was late, who borrowed money for job interviews, who still used our family Netflix password. Sophia? The word barely made it past my lips. "She contacted our corporate hotline 3 days ago, claims she had concerns about your financial behavior and felt compelled to report it for the company's protection." Harrison's voice carried the rehearsed quality of someone repeating a script. "She provided specific details about your access to departmental accounts." I felt my professional composure cracking like ice under pressure. "This is insane. Sophia doesn't even work here. She doesn't understand how our budgets operate, how our—" "Clara." Harrison's interruption was gentle but firm. "I understand this is shocking, but we have to take all allegations seriously, especially those involving financial misconduct." The leather chair suddenly felt like a trap. I forced myself to breathe, to think like the project manager who just delivered another flawless presentation. What happens now? HR will conduct a full investigation. Leah Wong will be leading it. Harrison's mention of Wong sent another chill through me. Wong was notorious for her thorough, relentless approach to corporate investigations. She'd uncovered embezzlement schemes, exposed fraudulent expense reports, and ended several careers with her meticulous attention to detail. During the investigation, you'll remain in your position, but your access to departmental budgets will be temporarily suspended. He slid a document across the desk. This outlines the process and your rights during the investigation. I picked up the paper, but the words blurred together. My sister had called my boss. My sister had accused me of stealing. My sister had potentially destroyed my career with a phone call to a corporate hotline. Mr. Harrison, I need you to know that I am completely innocent of these charges. Whatever Sophia told you, whatever she thinks she knows, she's wrong. He nodded slowly. I hope so, Clara. I genuinely hope so. You've been a valuable member of this team. But you understand that I have to protect the company's interests. I stood, my legs surprisingly steady. I understand. When do I meet with HR? Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m. sharp. He paused, and for a moment, the man who'd mentored my career flickered through his professional mask. Clara, if there's anything you need to tell me, anything that might explain these allegations, now would be the time. I met his gaze directly. There's nothing to explain because I didn't do anything wrong. Walking back to my office felt like a death march. Colleagues nodded as I passed, their smiles normal and unknowing. They had no idea that their reliable project manager had just been accused of embezzlement by her own sister. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time. So if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now, back to the story. I closed my office door and sank into my chair, staring at the framed photo on my desk, Sophia and me, at last year's company holiday party. She'd been so proud to attend, so impressed by the venue and the open bar. She'd spent the evening telling everyone about her successful sister who worked for a Fortune 500 company. Now, she'd tried to destroy that same success with a single phone call. The question that burned in my chest wasn't whether I could prove my innocence. I knew I was innocent. The question was why Sophia had chosen to obliterate her own sister's life and what she hoped to gain from watching it burn. The walk to HR felt like walking to my own execution. The elevator's digital display counted down the floors, 15, 14, 13, each number marking another second closer to a confrontation that could end my career. I'd barely slept, my mind cycling through every financial transaction, every budget decision, every invoice I'd ever approved. Leah Wong's office was a study in controlled intimidation. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of the Hudson River, but the furniture was arranged to ensure visitors faced away from the view, focusing instead on Wong herself. She sat behind a desk so clean it looked surgical, her silver hair pulled back in a style that suggested no nonsense and even less patience for lies. Ms. Martinez, please have a seat. Her voice carried the flat tone of someone who'd conducted hundreds of these meetings. She didn't look up from the file spread before her. My file, I realized with a sinking feeling. I settled into the chair across from her, my hands folded in my lap. The silence stretched until she finally raised her eyes to meet mine. They were sharp, analytical, the eyes of someone who'd built a career on spotting deception. Let's get straight to the point. We have allegations of financial misconduct spanning 6 months, unauthorized access to departmental accounts, forged invoices to phantom vendors, and the systematic theft of approximately $50,000. She slid a document across the desk. These are copies of the transactions in question. My hands trembled slightly as I picked up the papers. Bank statements, invoice copies, account logs, all bearing my signature or my login credentials. The amounts were staggering. $8,000 to Metropolitan Office Solutions for supplies that were never delivered. $12,000 to Empire Consulting Group for services that were never performed. Payment after payment to companies I'd never heard of, all apparently authorized by me. I didn't approve any of these transactions. My voice was steady, but barely. Wong leaned back in her chair, her expression unchanged. Yet they all carry your electronic signature, your login credentials, your departmental authorization codes. Then someone else used my credentials. Who would have access to your login information? The question hung in the air like a trap. I'd been careful with my passwords, changing them regularly, never sharing them. But Sophia had borrowed my laptop several times over the past year to update her resume, she'd said, to apply for jobs online. She needed my work email to send potential employers her portfolio because her personal account looked unprofessional. Ms. Martinez, Wong's voice cut through my racing thoughts. I keep my credentials secure. I've never shared them with anyone. It wasn't technically a lie, but it wasn't the full truth either. Wong made a note on her pad. These phantom vendors, Metropolitan Office Solutions, Empire Consulting, Pinnacle Services, you claim no knowledge of them?
None whatsoever. Yet purchase orders were placed with them. Invoices were received and processed. Payment was authorized through your department's budget. She pulled out another sheet. This is your signature on the original purchase order for Metropolitan Office Solutions, dated 3 months ago. I stared at the document. The signature looked like mine, the same flowing C, the same abbreviated scroll for my last name. But I had no memory of signing it, no recollection of even seeing this company's name before today. I didn't sign this. Someone forged your signature? That's the only explanation. Wong's pen scratched against her pad. Who in your department has the authority to access these accounts? Just me and my assistant, Daniel Ruiz. But Daniel would never what? Never steal? Never forge documents? Her voice sharpened. Ms. Martinez, someone with intimate knowledge of your departmental procedures and access to your authorization codes has stolen $50,000 from this company. If it wasn't you, then who? The implied accusation was clear. Either I was the thief or I was criminally negligent in protecting company assets. Neither option offered a path forward that didn't end with my termination. I don't know, I admitted, but I didn't steal this money. Wong closed the file with a decisive snap. Here's what's going to happen. We're conducting a full forensic audit of your departmental accounts. Every transaction, every vendor, every invoice will be scrutinized. We're bringing in external auditors to examine the payment trails. My mouth went dry. How long will that take? As long as it takes. She leaned forward, her voice dropping to a whisper that somehow felt more threatening than shouting. Ms. Martinez, if you're innocent, then this investigation will clear your name. If you're not, it will destroy your career and likely result in criminal charges. I understand. Do you? Her eyes never left mine. Because this isn't just about your job anymore. $50,000 is grand larceny in New York. That's a felony. Prison time. The words hit me like physical blows. Prison. Criminal record. The complete obliteration of everything I'd worked for. You're not taking this seriously enough. You need to understand something. This company has zero tolerance for financial crimes. We prosecute to the full extent of the law. If you're guilty, your best option is to confess now and cooperate with returning the stolen funds. I can't confess to something I didn't do. Then you'd better hope our investigation proves that. She stood, signaling the meeting's end. You're suspended from all financial responsibilities pending the completion of this investigation. You'll report to Mr. Harrison daily, and you're not to discuss this matter with anyone except your legal counsel. I walked to the door on unsteady legs, my professional world crumbling with each step. Ms. Martinez, Wong's voice stopped me at the threshold. I turned back. Whoever reported you, they knew details about your procedures that only someone very close to you would know. Someone who'd watched you work, learned your habits, understood your systems. Her expression was unreadable. You might want to think about who that could be. The elevator ride back to my floor felt endless. Wong's words echoed in my mind. Someone very close to me, someone who'd watched me work, someone who understood my systems. Someone like Sophia, who'd sat at my desk dozens of times, who'd used my laptop, who'd asked casual questions about my work that I answered without thinking twice. My sister hadn't just accused me of theft, she'd studied me carefully enough to frame me for it. The corporate cafe was nearly empty at 3 in the afternoon, the lunch rush long over and the dinner crowd still hours away. I sat in a corner booth, my untouched coffee growing cold while I stared at the rain streaking down the windows. 24 hours since Wong's interrogation, and I felt like I was drowning in slow motion. Clara. Daniel Ruiz slid into the seat across from me, his concerned expression immediately replacing his usual easy smile. His thick black hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, a nervous habit I recognized from particularly challenging projects. I think they think I'm a thief, I said simply.
His dark eyes widened. What? I told him everything. The accusation, the HR meeting, the $50,000, the phantom vendors. With each detail, his expression grew more incredulous. When I mentioned Sophia as the source of the allegations, he actually laughed. Sophia? Your sister Sophia, who calls you crying every time her car payment is late? He shook his head. That's insane. You're the most honest person I know. You once spent an hour trying to return a $20 overpayment to a vendor. Wong doesn't care about my reputation for honesty. She cares about evidence, and right now, all the evidence points to me. Daniel leaned forward, his voice dropping to a whisper. Clara, I've seen your work for 3 years. I've watched you triple-check every invoice, question every expense, fight with accounting over $10 discrepancies. There is no way you stole $50,000. The conviction in his voice almost broke me. I'd been so focused on defending myself to HR and my boss that I'd forgotten what it felt like to have someone believe in me unconditionally. Thank you, I whispered. Don't thank me for stating facts. He pulled out his phone. Tell me about these phantom vendors. Metro what solutions? Metropolitan Office Solutions. Empire Consulting Group. Pinnacle Services. I recited the names from memory. All companies I've never heard of, but apparently I've been painting them for months. Daniel's fingers flew across his phone screen. I'm checking our vendor database. If these companies were legitimate, they'd have contracts on file, contact information, service records. I watched him work, remembering countless late nights when his resourcefulness had saved our projects. He had an intuitive understanding of corporate systems that complemented my attention to detail perfectly. Interesting, he looked up from his phone. Metropolitan Office Solutions has no contract on file, no service agreement, no purchase history before 3 months ago. It's like they materialized just to steal from us. What about the others? Same pattern. Empire first appears in our system 4 months ago. Pinnacle Services 5 months ago. His expression darkened. Clara, these aren't legitimate vendors. Someone created these companies specifically to embezzle money from your department. The confirmation of what I'd suspected didn't bring relief, it brought terror. If someone created fake companies to frame me, then this isn't random. This is personal. Your sister had access to your computer, right? Daniel's question was gentle but pointed. I nodded reluctantly. She borrowed my laptop several times. To job hunt, she said. I never thought anything of it. Did you ever leave her alone with it? The memory hit me like a punch. 2 months ago, Sophia had come to my apartment for dinner. I'd gotten a work call that lasted nearly an hour, leaving her in my living room with my open laptop. When I'd returned, she'd been researching apartment listings, or so she'd said. Yes, I admitted, more than once.
Daniel's jaw tightened. Clara, someone with access to your computer could have learned your login credentials, studied your departmental procedures, figured out how to manipulate the vendor approval process. You think Sophia? I think your sister knows more about these phantom companies than she's admitting. He leaned back in his chair. The question is why? Why would she want to destroy your career? The question I'd been avoiding since Harrison's revelation yesterday. Sophia and I had grown apart over the past few years, our paths diverging as mine ascended and hers stagnated. She'd been increasingly bitter about my success, making snide comments about my corporate lifestyle and my fancy apartment. But wanting to hurt me was one thing. Systematically framing me for embezzlement was another. She's always been jealous, I said finally, of my job, my salary, my stability. But I never thought she'd destroy your life to make herself feel better? Daniel's voice was hard. Maybe it's time to stop giving her the benefit of the doubt. I stared out the window at the city beyond. Somewhere out there, Sophia was going about her day while I sat in this cafe contemplating the ruins of my career. The sister who'd once been my closest confidant had become my worst enemy, and I'd been blind to see it coming. What do I do? I asked. Daniel reached across the table and squeezed my hand. We prove you're innocent. And if Sophia is behind this, we prove she's guilty.
How? By doing what we do best, meticulous research and attention to detail. His grip tightened. These phantom vendors had to deposit the stolen money somewhere. They had to have bank accounts, routing numbers, paper trails. If we can trace the money, we can find out who's really behind this. For the first time in 24 hours, I felt a flicker of hope. Won't HR's investigation uncover the same thing? Eventually, but they're not looking to clear your name. They're looking to build a case against you. We need to find the truth first. I met his eyes, seeing the determination there. This could get you in trouble too. If they think you're helping me cover something up. Clara, his voice was firm, you're not just my colleague, you're my friend, and I'm not going to let your sister destroy you while I stand by and do nothing. The relief was overwhelming. After feeling isolated and attacked, having someone in my corner felt like finding shelter in a storm. Okay, I said, where do we start? Daniel smiled for the first time since sitting down, with late-night coffee and archived financial files, just like the old days. The old days when we were solving budget crises, not solving felonies. Same skill set, higher stakes. He stood, gathering his phone and keys. Meet me in my office tonight at 8. And Clara, yeah? We're going to figure this out. Your sister might be clever, but she's not smarter than both of us working together. As I watched him walk away, I felt something I hadn't experienced in days. Determination replacing despair. Sophia had made a critical mistake when she decided to frame me. She'd underestimated not just my innocence, but my ability to fight back. And she'd forgotten that in the corporate world, the most dangerous enemies are the ones who know how to read between the lines of financial statements and follow paper trails to their source. If my sister wanted a war, she'd chosen the wrong battlefield. This was my world, my expertise, my home turf. And I was about to remind her why she'd succeeded here while she'd failed everywhere else. The office building at midnight felt like a tomb. Security had let Daniel and me in with raised eyebrows, but no questions. Late nights weren't unusual in our department during crunch periods. What was unusual was the nature of our research. Instead of preparing presentations or analyzing market data, we were hunting for evidence of embezzlement. Daniel's office was smaller than mine, but organized with military precision. He'd cleared his desk completely, creating a workspace that looked more like a detective's incident room than a corporate environment. 2 laptops hummed quietly, their screens casting blue light across stacks of printed financial documents. Okay, Daniel said, settling into his chair with a cup of coffee that smelled strong enough to wake the dead. I've pulled every transaction from your department over the past 8 months, the legitimate ones and the questionable ones. I pulled up a chair beside him, my own coffee cooling forgotten, as I stared at the spreadsheets filling his monitors. How did you get access to all this? I may have stretched my administrative privileges a bit, he admitted with a slight grin,
But technically, as your assistant project manager, I have legitimate reasons to review departmental finances. The data was overwhelming. Hundreds of transactions, thousands of line items, months of financial activity condensed into rows and columns. But Daniel had color-coded everything. Green for legitimate expenses, red for the phantom vendor payments, and yellow for transactions that fell into a gray area. "Look at this pattern," he said, pointing to the red entries. "The fraudulent transactions always happen on Tuesdays or Thursdays, never Mondays, Wednesdays, or Fridays." I leaned closer, studying the dates. That's specific. Why would that matter?" "I don't know yet, but patterns usually mean something." His fingers flew across the keyboard, pulling up another screen. "Now look at this, the amounts. They're never round numbers, always something like 8,247 or 12,836. If someone was just stealing money, wouldn't they pick cleaner amounts? Unless they were trying to make it look like legitimate business expenses," I murmured, the pieces starting to click together. Exactly. Whoever did this understood how corporate accounting worked, and they knew what would trigger audits and what would slip through unnoticed. Daniel opened another file, this one showing bank routing information for the phantom vendors. Here's where it gets interesting. All three fake companies, Metropolitan Office Solutions, Empire Consulting, and Pinnacle Services, they all use the same bank.
My pulse quickened. The same bank? First National Downtown, branch 047. He pulled up another screen showing account details. But here's the really interesting part, the account holder information. The name on the screen made my blood run cold. S. Martinez Consulting, LLC. "Sophia," I whispered. "Your sister created a shell company," Daniel said grimly, "probably used it to open multiple business accounts under different names. The money from all three phantom vendors flows into accounts controlled by S. Martinez Consulting." I stared at the evidence, feeling sick. This wasn't a crime of opportunity or a moment of weakness. This was sophisticated, premeditated fraud. Sophia had spent months planning this scheme, creating fake companies, opening bank accounts, studying my departmental procedures well enough to exploit them. "How much?" I asked, dreading the answer. Daniel's fingers moved across the calculator app on his phone. $47,863. Over 6 months. "She stole almost $50,000 and then accused me of stealing it." "Worse than that," Daniel said, his voice heavy with disgust. "She positioned herself as the whistleblower, the concerned sister who discovered her siblings' crimes and courageously reported them. If this had worked, she'd have been seen as a hero while you went to prison." The magnitude of Sophia's betrayal was breathtaking. This wasn't just theft. It was a calculated attempt to destroy my life while profiting from my reputation and access. She'd used my trust, my credentials, my own departmental systems against me. "Look at this," Daniel said, opening another file. "The timing of when she accessed your computer matches perfectly with when these fake vendor accounts were created." He showed me login logs from my work laptop, access times when I'd been in meetings or out of the office, but when Sophia had been visiting my apartment or borrowing my computer for her job search. She was learning our systems, I realized. Every time she borrowed my laptop, she was studying how our vendor approval process worked, how invoices got processed, how payments were authorized. And she was clever about it. "Look," Daniel pointed to a series of transactions. "She never stole large amounts at once. Always smaller sums spread across different fake companies, different time periods. If she'd been patient, she might have gotten away with this for years. So why did she report me now?" Daniel leaned back in his chair, thinking. Maybe she got scared. Maybe she thought someone was getting suspicious. Or maybe, he paused, his expression darkening, maybe she always planned to frame you. Maybe stealing the money was just phase 1. The thought sent chills down my spine. Had Sophia's endgame always been to destroy me? Had every borrowed laptop, every casual question about my work, every family dinner where she seemed interested in my career been part of a long-term plan to ruin my life?
We need to trace these bank accounts, I said, forcing myself to focus on solutions rather than the emotional devastation. Already on it, Daniel opened yet another screen, this one showing bank statements he'd somehow accessed. S. Martinez Consulting has been receiving deposits that match exactly with the phantom vendor payments. The timing is perfect. Money leaves your departmental budget on Thursday, shows up in Sophia's account on Friday. How did you get access to her bank records? Let's just say that S. Martinez Consulting isn't as private as Sophia thinks it is. When you register a business entity, certain financial information becomes part of the public record. His smile was grim. Your sister is smart, but she's not a financial crimes expert. I stared at the evidence spread across his desk. Bank statements, transaction logs, login records, routing numbers, a complete paper trail that led directly from the stolen money to my sister's accounts. It was damning, comprehensive, and absolutely devastating to Sophia's carefully constructed narrative. This is enough to clear me, I said, hardly daring to believe it. This is enough to send Sophia to prison, Daniel corrected. Clara, she didn't just steal money. She committed fraud, identity theft, computer crimes, and probably half a dozen other felonies. When Wong sees this evidence, the investigation is going to flip completely. For the first time in days, I felt like I could breathe properly. The weight of false accusation was lifting, replaced with something else. A cold, hard anger at the sister who had tried to destroy me. What's our next move? I asked. Daniel started organizing the documents into neat stacks. We present this to Wong first thing tomorrow morning. Let HR's investigation confirm what we found. And then, he met my eyes, then we watch Sophia's world collapse the same way she tried to collapse yours.
The office building's heating system hummed to life, breaking the silence that had settled over us. Outside, the city slept, unaware that in this small office, justice was finally taking shape. Sophia had made one critical mistake in her elaborate scheme. She'd assumed I was too trusting, too naive, too dependent on family loyalty to fight back effectively. She was about to learn how wrong she'd been. The cafe Sophia had chosen was trendy and expensive, the kind of place where a simple coffee cost $12, and the clientele consisted mainly of influencers taking photos of their avocado toast. I arrived 15 minutes early, selecting a table with a clear view of the entrance and both exits. Habits learned from countless corporate negotiations where positioning mattered. Sophia swept in exactly on time, her designer handbag swinging from her shoulder and her hair styled in loose waves that probably took an hour to achieve. She looked radiant, confident, completely at ease. Not at all like someone who'd spent the past 6 months systematically embezzling money from my employer. Clara. She air-kissed both my cheeks, her perfume enveloping me in an expensive cloud. I sounded so stressed on the phone. What's going on? I'd crafted my call carefully, playing the role of the confused sister seeking family support. Sophia had agreed to meet immediately, her voice full of concerned sympathy. Now, watching her settle into the chair across from me with practiced grace, I wondered how many of our interactions over the years had been performances. I'm having some trouble at work, I began, keeping my voice neutral. Someone accused me of financial misconduct. Sophia's eyes widened, her hand flying to her throat in a gesture of shock. Oh my God, Clara, that's terrible. Who would say such a thing? The performance was flawless. If I hadn't seen the bank statements with her name on them, I might have believed her surprise was genuine. I don't know, I lied, but they're saying I stole money from company accounts, created fake vendors, authorized fraudulent payments. It's completely insane. Of course it's insane. Sophia reached across the table and squeezed my hand. Clara, you're the most honest person I know. You wouldn't steal a penny, let alone thousands of dollars. $50,000, I corrected quietly. Something flickered across her face so quickly I almost missed it. But there it was, a micro-expression of satisfaction, quickly masked by renewed concern. 50,000? Clara, that's serious. That's felony territory.
I know. I let my voice crack slightly. I could go to prison. Even if they can't prove I did it, my career is over. Who's going to hire someone who's been investigated for embezzlement? Sophia nodded sympathetically, but I caught her fighting back a smile. Have you talked to a lawyer? HR says they're still investigating. They won't tell me who made the accusation, but they have specific details about my departmental procedures. Someone who understands how our systems work. That's so weird. Sophia stirred her latte absently. Who would know that much about your job? I watched her carefully. I've been trying to figure that out. The person would need access to my computer, knowledge of our vendor approval process, understanding of how invoices get processed. Maybe someone you work with. What about that guy Daniel you're always talking about? The suggestion was delivered casually, but it revealed something important. Sophia was trying to redirect suspicion away from herself and toward Daniel. She was thinking tactically, already working to protect herself. Daniel has been completely supportive. He's helping me review financial records, trying to figure out how this happened. Be careful about that, Sophia said quickly. If money is missing, you don't want to look like you're tampering with evidence. Another tell. Sophia was trying to discourage me from investigating further. She wanted me to remain passive while HR's investigation proceeded along the lines that she'd established with her false accusation. Sophia, I said, letting confusion color my voice, have you ever heard of companies called Metropolitan Office Solutions, Empire Consulting, or Pinnacle Services? This time, the reaction was unmistakable. Her hand tightened around her coffee cup, and her eyes shifted away from mine for just a moment. No, she said. Should I have? Those are the vendors I supposedly created to steal money. The investigator said the transactions were very sophisticated, professional-level fraud. Wow, Sophia shook her head. Someone really has it out for you.
I leaned forward, studying her face. The weird thing is, the timing of these transactions matches exactly with when you were borrowing my laptop, when you were job hunting at my apartment. Her laugh was bright and immediate, but forced. Clara, you're starting to sound paranoid. You think I had something to do with this? Of course not, I said quickly. I'm just trying to understand how someone got access to my systems. The investigator said whoever did this knew details about my work that only someone very close to me would know. Sophia's composure was cracking now. Her free hand drummed against the table and she kept glancing toward the exit. Look, she said, her voice taking on a harder edge. I know you're upset, but you can't start suspecting everyone around you. That's how innocent people destroy their own lives. I'm not suspecting everyone. I'm trying to understand how this happened. Maybe you should focus on proving your innocence instead of playing detective. Her sympathy was evaporating, replaced with something that looked like irritation. And maybe you should consider that if you're in this much trouble, you must have done something to deserve it. The mask was slipping. This was the Sophia I'd been seeing more of lately. Resentful, bitter, eager to tear down anyone whose success highlighted her own failures. Deserve it? I kept my voice level. Sophia, I could go to prison for something I didn't do. Well, maybe if you hadn't been so busy looking down on the rest of us from your corporate tower, you would have noticed someone was setting you up. Her voice was sharp now, all pretense of sisterly concern abandoned. You've always acted like you're better than everyone else, like your fancy job and your expensive apartment make you superior. There it was. The real reason behind everything. Not just greed, but jealousy. Years of accumulated resentment finally boiling over. I've never acted superior to you. Please, Sophia's laugh was bitter. Every family dinner, every phone call, every interaction we have, you manage to work in some humble brag about your success. Your latest promotion, your big presentation, your important meetings with executives.
I was sharing my life with my sister. You were rubbing my face in your success while I struggled to find decent work. She leaned back in her chair, her arms crossed defensively. Do you have any idea what it's like to be compared to you constantly? Why can't you be more like Clara? Clara has her life together. Clara is so responsible. The pain in her voice was real, even if her methods of dealing with it were criminal. But I couldn't afford sympathy now. I needed to know the full extent of her scheme. So, you decided to destroy my career? I decided to tell the truth about what I observed. Her voice was ice cold now. If you can't handle the consequences of your actions, that's not my problem. The admission was subtle, but clear. Sophia was acknowledging that she'd made the accusation, even if she wasn't confessing to the theft itself. What exactly did you observe? I pressed. I observed someone with access to company accounts, knowledge of financial systems, and a lifestyle that doesn't match her salary. Sophia's eyes glittered with malice. I observed someone who might not be as honest as everyone thinks. And you felt compelled to report these observations to my employer. I felt compelled to do the right thing. She gathered her purse and stood, then turned to leave, then paused and looked back at me. Clara, some advice from your little sister. When you're in a hole, stop digging. Accept responsibility for what you've done, and maybe you can work out some kind of plea deal. Watching her walk away, her heels clicking confidently against the cafe's hardwood floors, I felt a cold certainty settle over me. Sophia hadn't just stolen money and framed me for the crime. She'd convinced herself that I deserved to be destroyed, that bringing me down was an act of justice rather than jealousy. She was about to learn that, justified or not, her actions had consequences she hadn't anticipated. And unlike Sophia's carefully constructed lies, those consequences were going to be absolutely real. Leah Wong's office felt different this time. The morning light streaming through her windows seemed brighter, less threatening, though her expression remained as unreadable as ever. I sat across from her desk with Daniel beside me, our evidence organized in neat folders that represented weeks of meticulous investigation. Mrs. Martinez, Wong began, her voice carrying its usual clinical tone, you requested this meeting to present new information regarding your case.
Yes. I placed the first folder on her desk. We've discovered evidence that the theft was committed by someone else using my credentials and access. Wong's eyebrows rose slightly, the closest thing to surprise I'd ever seen from her. We? Mr. Ruiz has been assisting me in reviewing departmental financial records. As my assistant project manager, he has legitimate access to this information. She opened the folder, her eyes scanning the bank statements and transaction logs we'd compiled. The silence stretched for several minutes as she absorbed the documentation. These appeared to be records for S. Martinez Consulting, LLC, she said finally, my sister's shell company, the entity she used to receive payments from the phantom vendors. Wong's fingers drummed against her desk, the first sign of agitation I'd seen from her. You're alleging that your sister created false companies to embezzle money from your department, then reported you for the crime she committed herself. The evidence speaks for itself, Daniel interjected. The timing of the fraudulent transactions matches exactly with when Sophia Martinez had access to Clara's computer. The money trail leads directly to accounts she controls. Wong studied the documents more carefully, cross-referencing them with the file she'd built on my case. This is sophisticated. More sophisticated than anything I could have orchestrated, I said. Sophia spent months learning our systems, creating false vendors, establishing banking relationships. This wasn't a crime of opportunity, it was a long-term plan. If this evidence is accurate, Wong said slowly, then someone has committed not just embezzlement, but fraud, identity theft, and filing false reports with corporate security. That's our assessment, Daniel agreed. Wong closed the folder and leaned back in her chair,
her analytical mind clearly working through the implications. Miss Martinez, I have to ask, why didn't you present this information sooner? Because until 3 days ago, I didn't suspect my own sister was trying to destroy my life. I was focused on defending myself against accusations I knew were false. It wasn't until we started tracing the money trail that the truth became clear. And you're certain these documents are authentic? Daniel leaned forward. I can provide access logs, server timestamps, and metadata that confirm when and how these records were accessed. Everything can be independently verified. Wang made several notes on her pad, her pen scratching loudly in the quiet office. Assuming this evidence is legitimate, it would completely change the nature of our investigation. It would prove that Clara is innocent, Daniel said firmly. It would prove that Clara was not the primary actor in this theft, Wang corrected. However, there are still questions about negligence, security protocols, and why unauthorized access to her credentials wasn't detected sooner. I felt my stomach tighten. Even with proof of my innocence, HR was still looking for ways to hold me responsible. Miss Martinez, I followed all company security protocols. I changed my passwords regularly, never shared my credentials with anyone, and reported all suspicious activity immediately. I couldn't have prevented someone from accessing my computer when I allowed them to use it for legitimate purposes. Legitimate purposes? My sister was job hunting. She needed to access professional websites, update her resume, send emails to potential employers. I had no reason to suspect she was studying our financial systems. Wang's expression softened slightly. Miss Martinez, I understand this must be extremely difficult. Being betrayed by a family member adds personal trauma to professional consequences. The acknowledgement of the emotional component surprised me. For the first time since this nightmare began, Wang was treating me like a person rather than just a case file. However, this evidence, while compelling, is circumstantial. We need additional verification before we can conclusively determine what happened. What kind of verification? Daniel asked. Independent forensic analysis of the computer systems your sister accessed, bank records that directly connect her to the fraudulent transactions, possibly testimony from financial institutions about how these accounts were established. I nodded, understanding the legal requirements even as frustration built in my chest. How long will that take? Several weeks, possibly months. This type of white-collar crime investigation requires coordination with external agencies and financial institutions.
And in the meantime, Wang consulted her notes. Given this new evidence, I'm recommending to Mr. Harrison that your access restrictions be lifted pending final resolution of the investigation. You'll return to full duties immediately. Relief flooded through me. Thank you. Don't thank me yet, Wang warned. If our investigation determines that you were negligent in protecting company assets, there will still be consequences. And if your sister's actions result in criminal charges, you may be called to testify against her. The thought of testifying against Sophia should have been painful, but all I felt was cold determination. I'll cooperate fully with any legal proceedings. Wang stood, signaling the end of our meeting. Ms. Martinez, I want you to understand something. In 20 years of conducting these investigations, I've seen every type of financial crime imaginable. What your sister allegedly did, framing a family member while positioning herself as a whistleblower, that's particularly calculating. I'm beginning to understand that, I said quietly. Be prepared for the possibility that this isn't over. If she's willing to destroy your career for $50,000, she may not go quietly when confronted with evidence of her own crimes. Daniel and I walked to the elevator in silence, the weight of Wang's warning settling over us. As the doors closed, I caught my reflection in the polished metal. I looked tired, stressed, but no longer defeated. She believed us, Daniel said finally. She believes the evidence. That's what matters. Clara, Wang's right about one thing. Sophia isn't going to just accept being exposed. She's invested too much in her narrative of you as the guilty party.
I thought about my sister's performance at the cafe, her conviction that I deserved whatever consequences I faced. Sophia had constructed an entire worldview where her crimes were justified and my destruction was righteous. Let her fight it, I said as the elevator reached my floor. I have something she doesn't. What's that? The truth. I stepped out of the elevator feeling lighter than I had in weeks. And you. And now, finally, I have HR's attention focused in the right direction. As I walked back to my office, I realized that for the first time since this nightmare began, I was no longer playing defense. The investigation had shifted, the evidence was clear, and justice was finally pointing toward the right target. Sophia had made the mistake of underestimating not just my innocence, but my ability to fight back. She was about to learn that trying to destroy someone's life carried consequences that extended far beyond corporate HR meetings. The game had changed, and this time I intended to win. The Martinez family dining room hadn't changed in 20 years. Same mahogany table, same china cabinet filled with wedding gifts that were never used, same suffocating atmosphere of unspoken expectations and carefully managed appearances. I sat across from my parents, watching my mother fuss with the place settings while my father carved the roast with surgical precision. "So," Dad said without looking up from his plate, "we heard about your troubles at work." Word had traveled fast through our small family network. Sophia had called them, of course, spinning her version of events before I could present the facts. I had received a tersely worded invitation to dinner, the kind that wasn't really an invitation. "It's resolved," I said simply. "HR is investigating, but new evidence has cleared my name." Mom's fork clinked against her plate. "Clara, honey, maybe you should consider that where there's smoke, there's usually fire." The casual dismissal hit harder than Sophia's outright accusations. "Mom, I didn't steal anything." "Of course not intentionally," she said quickly, her voice taking on the placating tone she'd used when I was a child caught in some minor transgression. "But sometimes these corporate environments are so competitive. Maybe you made some poor decisions under pressure." "Like what decisions?" I kept my voice level, though anger was building in my chest. Dad finally looked up from his plate. "Clara, you've always been ambitious. Sometimes ambitious people cut corners to get ahead." "I didn't cut corners. I was framed." "By whom?" Mom asked, her tone suggesting she found the idea ridiculous. "By Sophia."
That's a serious accusation, Dad said finally. "It's a serious crime," I countered. "Sophia created fake companies, stole $50,000 from my department, then accused me of the theft to cover her tracks." "Sophia would never," Mom began. "Sophia admitted it," I interrupted. "Not directly, but she confirmed that she reported me to my employer. She believes I deserve to be destroyed because of my success." Dad set down his fork with deliberate precision. "Clara, your sister has struggled to find her place in the world. She's been through some difficult times while you've had everything handed to you." "Handed to me?" The words came out louder than I'd intended. I worked 60-hour weeks for 3 years to get my position. I earned every promotion, every raise, every bit of respect I have at that company. "And Sophia has watched you succeed while she's failed at job after job," Mom added softly. "Maybe she made a mistake, but she's still your sister." "A mistake?" I stared at them in disbelief. "She committed multiple felonies and tried to send me to prison. That's not a mistake. That's deliberate malice." "Sophia called us crying," Mom said, her voice taking on the protective tone she'd always used when defending her younger daughter. "She said you were trying to blame her for your problems at work. She's devastated that you'd accuse her of something so terrible." The manipulation was breathtaking. Even facing exposure, Sophia had preemptively painted herself as the victim of my false accusations. She'd turned my parents against me before I could even present the evidence. "Did you see the bank records, the fake companies, the money trail that leads directly to her accounts?" "We don't understand all that financial stuff, but we know Sophia's heart. She would never deliberately hurt you."
Then explain S. Martinez Consulting LLC. Explain how exactly the stolen money ended up in her bank account. Mom's hands twisted in her lap. Maybe someone used her identity. Maybe she's a victim too. The desperate rationalization revealed everything I needed to know. No amount of evidence would convince them. Sophia would always be their baby, the one who needed protection and excuses. I would always be the one expected to be stronger, more responsible, more understanding. I see, I said quietly, standing from the table. So, even with proof that Sophia committed crimes against me, your response is that I should understand her motivations and forgive her? Clara, sit down, Dad commanded, in the voice that had terrified me as a child. No. The word came out steady and final. I'm done sitting down. I'm done making excuses for Sophia's behavior. And I'm done pretending that family loyalty means accepting abuse. She's still your sister, Mom pleaded. She stopped being my sister the moment she decided to destroy my life. I gathered my purse and keys. When the FBI arrests her for federal wire fraud, don't call me asking for help with her legal fees. Clara! Dad's voice followed me to the door, but I didn't turn around. Walking to my car, I felt something I hadn't experienced in years. Complete freedom from the need for my parents' approval. They'd made their choice, just as Sophia had made hers. They could all face the consequences together. My phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. Wong wants to meet tomorrow morning, says the FBI is interested in the case. I smiled as I started the engine. Sophia had counted on family loyalty to protect her, just as she'd counted on my naivety to shield her crimes. She was about to learn that some bridges, once burned, can never be rebuilt. The Monday morning meeting felt different from the moment I walked into Wong's office. She wasn't alone. A man in a dark suit sat beside her desk, his FBI credentials clearly visible in the leather wallet he left open on the table. Special Agent Marcus Rodriguez had the kind of quiet intensity that suggested he'd seen every type of white-collar criminal and wasn't impressed by any of them. Ms. Martinez, Wong began, Agent Rodriguez is here because our investigation has uncovered evidence of federal crimes, wire fraud specifically. Rodriguez leaned forward slightly. When stolen money crosses state lines through electronic transfers, it becomes our jurisdiction. The phantom companies your sister created used banks in multiple states to move the embezzled funds. I nodded, trying to process the magnitude of what Sophia had stumbled into. How can I help?
Wong consulted her notes. We're going to reactivate your full system access and create a scenario where your sister believes she can steal again. If she takes the bait, we'll have real-time evidence of the crime. You want to use me as bait, I said. We want to give her enough rope to hang herself, Rodriguez corrected. But yes, you'll be the conduit. Are you comfortable with that? The question was purely procedural. After what Sophia had put me through, I would have volunteered to wear a wire and confront her directly. What do you need me to do? Wong slid a document across the desk. We're going to create a fake emergency budget allocation, a rush project that requires immediate vendor payments with abbreviated approval processes. We'll make sure Sophia knows about it. How? You're going to tell her, Rodriguez said simply. In a conversation we'll be monitoring. You'll express frustration about the project, mention the streamlined approval process, maybe even complain about having to work late to handle the payments. I studied the fake project details. It was sophisticated, a plausible emergency consulting contract that would require immediate payment to a new vendor. The kind of opportunity Sophia wouldn't be able to resist. What if she doesn't take the bait? Then we proceed with the evidence we already have, Wong said. But if she does attempt to create another phantom vendor and steal from this fake project, we'll have her committing crimes in real time while under federal surveillance. Rodriguez's phone buzzed and he glanced at it briefly. Miss Martinez, I want you to understand something. Your sister isn't just facing corporate discipline anymore. Wire fraud carries a maximum sentence of 20 years in federal prison. If she takes this bait, she's not just making a mistake. She's destroying her life. The weight of that reality settled over me. 20 years. Sophia could be in prison until she was in her 50s, all because she couldn't handle her jealousy of my success? Are you having second thoughts? Wong asked, reading my expression. No, I said firmly. Sophia made her choices. She chose to steal money, she chose to frame me, and she chose to let me face potential prison time for her crimes. If she chooses to steal again, that's on her. Rodriguez nodded approvingly. Good, because your sister is about to get a call from her bank about suspicious activity on her S. Martinez consulting account. Nothing threatening, just routine fraud prevention questions that will make her nervous. You want her anxious when I contact her? We want her desperate, Wong corrected. Desperate people make careless mistakes. My phone rang right on schedule. Sophia's number appeared on the screen, and Rodriguez nodded for me to answer. Clara? Sophia's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. I need to talk to you. Can you meet me for coffee? I can't today. I'm swamped with this emergency project at work. I'll probably be here until midnight processing vendor payments. What kind of project? I could hear the hunger in her voice, the immediate shift from panic to opportunity. Even facing potential exposure, Sophia couldn't resist the possibility of another score. Some consulting emergency, the client is demanding immediate service, so we have to fast-track the vendor approval process. It's a nightmare. That sounds stressful. It is, especially since I have to personally authorize all the payments. There's no time for the usual approval chains. I paused, letting the implication hang. Look, I have to go. We'll talk later, okay? I ended the call and looked at Rodriguez and Wong. She's interested. Now we wait, Rodriguez said, checking his watch. If she's going to create a new phantom vendor for your fake project, she'll need to move fast. We'll know within 24 hours. Wong gathered the files on her desk. Miss Martinez, I want you to go about your normal routine today. Work on real projects, attend your usual meetings. Don't do anything that would seem suspicious if your sister is watching. She's going to be watching? She's going to be studying, Rodriguez corrected, looking for vulnerabilities in your emergency approval process, figuring out how to insert her fake vendor into your project workflow.
As I left Wong's office, I realized that for the first time since this nightmare began, I was actively participating in bringing Sophia to justice rather than just defending myself against her lies. It felt empowering and terrifying in equal measure. My sister had spent months learning my professional routines so she could exploit them. Now I was going to use that knowledge against her, giving her exactly enough information to ensure she walked directly into a federal trap. Sophia had always been the actress in our family, but she was about to discover that I'd learned a few things about performance myself. The conference room felt like a courtroom as we assembled for what Leah Wong had termed a final investigative meeting. Sophia sat across from me, her lawyer beside her, a young public defender who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Agent Rodriguez occupied one end of the table, his laptop open and recording equipment visible. Wong sat at the head, her expression unreadable as always. Sophia looked confident, almost smug. She dressed carefully for this meeting, professional attire that projected innocence and competence. Her hair was styled perfectly, her makeup subtle but flattering. She was still playing the role of the concerned sister who'd bravely reported corporate malfeasance. "Let's begin," Wong said, opening a thick folder. "Ms. Sophia Martinez, you contacted our corporate compliance hotline 6 weeks ago to report suspected financial crimes by your sister. Is that correct?" "Yes," Sophia said, her voice steady. "I was concerned about irregularities I'd observed in her spending patterns and lifestyle." "And you felt compelled to report these concerns to her employer?" "I felt it was my civic duty." Sophia's performance was flawless, earnest, reluctant, morally driven. "I love my sister, but I couldn't stand by and watch her steal from her company." Rodriguez leaned forward slightly. "Ms. Martinez, are you familiar with S. Martinez Consulting, LLC? For the first time, Sophia's composure cracked. Just a flicker of recognition, quickly masked. "No, I'm not." "It's a business entity registered in your name 3 months before you made your allegations against your sister."
Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, but Sophia shook her head. I think there's been some mistake. I've never registered any business. Wong slid a document across the table. This is the registration paperwork for S. Martinez Consulting. The signature matches samples of your handwriting from your driver's license application and employment records. Sophia barely glanced at the paper. Someone must have stolen my identity. For what purpose? Rodriguez asked. To frame me, obviously. Her voice was gaining strength, indignation replacing uncertainty. Wong opened another folder. Ms. Martinez, these are bank records for accounts associated with S. Martinez Consulting. Over the past 6 months, these accounts received exactly $47,863 in transfers from phantom vendors billing your department. I don't know anything about those accounts. The money was withdrawn using debit cards registered to your address. Security footage from ATM transactions shows you, personally, making the withdrawals. Her lawyer leaned over and whispered urgently in her ear. This time she listened. I'm not answering any more questions without additional legal counsel, Wong noted as if she'd expected this response. That's your right. However, we have additional evidence to present. Rodriguez opened his laptop and turned it toward the table. Yesterday, Ms. Martinez, you attempted to create another phantom vendor, Apex Strategic Solutions, to steal money from your sister's emergency project budget. The video showed Sophia at her laptop, her face clearly visible as she filled out fake vendor registration forms using information I'd provided about the non-existent emergency project. The timestamp showed her working late into the night, meticulously crafting yet another elaborate theft. The project you attempted to steal from was fictitious, created specifically to test whether you would attempt additional crimes once you learned of the investigation. Sophia stared at the screen, watching herself commit federal crimes in real time. Her face had gone pale, her carefully constructed confidence evaporating. The fake vendor you created yesterday has been linked to the same banking infrastructure as your previous phantom companies. You use the same routing numbers, the same account management system, the same electronic signature protocols. This is entrapment, her lawyer protested weakly.
This is a suspect voluntarily committing additional crimes while under investigation, Rodriguez corrected. Your client had full knowledge that she was being investigated for embezzlement, yet she chose to attempt another theft. Wong leaned back in her chair. Miss Martinez, the evidence is overwhelming. Bank records, security footage, digital forensics, and real-time surveillance of you committing additional crimes. You stole $47,863 from your sister's employer, then reported her for the theft to cover your tracks. For a moment, I thought Sophia might continue denying everything. Her mouth opened as if to protest, but then something in her expression shifted. The mask of innocence finally fell away, replaced by pure, undiluted rage. You want to know the truth? Sophia's voice was sharp as broken glass. Fine. Clara has had everything handed to her since we were children. Perfect grades, perfect job, perfect reputation. Everyone always compared me to her, always found me lacking. So you decided to destroy her life, Wong observed clinically. I decided to level the playing field. Sophia's eyes blazed with years of accumulated resentment. She didn't deserve her success any more than I deserved to struggle. If I couldn't have what she had, at least I could take it away from her. The confession hung in the air like poison gas. My sister had just admitted to federal crimes motivated by nothing more than jealousy and spite. Miss Martinez, Rodriguez said formally, you're under arrest for wire fraud, identity theft, and filing false reports with federal authorities. As the handcuffs clicked around Sophia's wrists, she looked directly at me for the first time since entering the room. This isn't over, Clara. Even if I go to prison, everyone will always wonder if you really were innocent. Your reputation is ruined either way. I met her gaze steadily. Sophia, my reputation is built on my work, my integrity, and my results. Your opinion and your crimes don't change any of that. Watching federal agents escort my sister from the conference room, I felt an overwhelming sense of closure.
The investigation was over, the truth had prevailed, and for the first time in weeks I could focus on rebuilding my career instead of defending my innocence. Sophia had been wrong about one thing. This was over. Completely and permanently over. 3 months later, I walked into my corner office. The promotion had come with Mr. Harrison's personal apology and the company's full confidence restored. Daniel knocked on my doorframe, coffee in hand, grinning at the nameplate that now read, Clara Martinez, Senior Project Director. "Any regrets?" he asked, settling into the chair across from my desk. My phone buzzed with another ignored text from my mother, pleading for family reconciliation while Sophia awaited trial. I deleted it without reading and looked out at the Manhattan skyline. "None," I said simply. Some bridges deserved to burn.
Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.